Okay, welcome everyone. It is a great pleasure to have you on the RFF CMCC Edits webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I am Miyuki Nagashima, Senior Researcher at the Research Institute of Innovative Technology for the Earth. I will be a moderator of this webinar. This webinar will be recorded. This would be possible to get it on demand. Let me share my screen for some introduction of the EDITS project. So what is EDITS project? It stands for Energy Demand Changes Induced by Technological and Social Innovations. This is coordinated by the Research Institute of Innovative Technology for the Earth, RITE, in Japan, and the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, IASA, in Austria, and funded by the government of Japan through the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, METI, Japan. These are the objectives of EDITS project, and to create a research community with a focus on end-use demand-side perspectives that further dialogue and cross-fertilization of research and policy analysis through the sharing of novel data, novel concept, methodologies, and policy analysis, and to improve the state-of-the-art of demand modeling in environment and climate policy analysis, and to better inform policy via structured model experiments and simulations that assess potential impacts, barriers, as well as synergies and trade-offs to the SDG objectives of demand-side policy interventions. And let me explain some housekeeping rules. Your audio and video are deactivated by default. If you need to intervene or ask questions, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen, ideally after the presentation, and I will give you the floor. Or you can send comments and questions in the chat, Q&A feature. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Nuno Bento. This is a great pleasure to welcome our esteemed collaborator from the EDITS network. Dr. Nuno Bento is an economist and integrated researcher at the DINÂMIA'CET Research Center at the University Institute of Lisbon, Portugal. He has already published 36 articles in renowned international scientific journals. The articles cover several topics on technological change and sustainability, particularly the diffusion of innovations, dynamics of socio-technical transitions, energy, and decarbonization analysis. Today, he's going to present his research titled Leverage Demand-Side Policies for Energy Security. This paper is co-authored by Arnold Grubler, Benigna Bozakis, Simon de Stark, David McCallum, Volker Cray, Caroline Zim, and Thiago Alves. It has appeared in Science recently. The research underpinning the results reported in this article was supported by the EDITS initiative. His presentation will last about 20 minutes, followed by the Q&A session. I will give the floor to Nuno, please.
Thank you, Miyuki. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Just in a moment. I would ask if you can see the slides. Okay, so I can proceed. So good morning again. It's a great pleasure to be here and present the results of our last research on strategies to enhance energy security. As Miyuki kindly mentioned, the title of our presentation today is Leverage Demand-Side Policies for Energy Security. This is a result of a collaborative research that has been done with esteemed colleagues, Arnold, Manny, Simon, Volker, David, Caroline, and Thiago. And this research has actually fulfilled in the past year, and produced an article recently that recently appeared in Science. The idea of this research is that we should depart from the goal of securing energy supply to emphasize the aim to secure critical social functions of the society and individual well-being. So the agenda for today is presented in this slide. I will start with the main motivation for studying energy security at this moment. So the importance of a comprehensive assessment when we talk about energy security. Then I'm going to present a simulation study, an assessment comparing different policies by using multiple indicators. I will also present the influence of different contexts on the results, further leverage effects of the strategies, some practical evidence before concluding. So this is the result of our research, which actually appeared in Science in March, in the edition of March. And you can access, or if you don't have access, please drop me an email. I will send you a PDF version or the link. So starting with the main motivation for this study. Why energy security? Why now? So a recent survey with more than 24,000 people in different countries of the world, 28 countries, actually show that for people in 18 on these 28 studies, the energy security and affordability, which actually is also a part of energy security in the way that reducing cost of energy for consumers, or at least not increasing too much. So it's also a part of the security definition. These two items appeared as the most important ones. Actually, in global average, they took more than 50%, almost 60% of the respondents' first priority. So that shows how energy security is a top priority of people in completely different settings, such as energy producers, South Africa, like South Africa or Norway, or even countries with high energy imports, such as, for instance, Italy. So for that reason, we actually felt the need to improve the knowledge on energy security. And one of the reasons why we would like to improve the knowledge is specifically shown in this graph. So this graph shows on the left hand the number of indicators of energy security by type, meaning supply side or end use metric, or in terms of indicators. And on the right side, you see the number of indexes of energy security. We have surveyed a large number of papers to look for these indicators, and these are the results. And what we see is a domination, a complete domination, more than 2/3 of the indicators and above 80% of the indexes, which actually focus only on the supply side. So we see that clearly the literature in terms of the suggested indicators are biased towards the supply side. Not even this literature is biased towards supply, but when we also were surprised to notice that whenever the papers suggest energy demand indicators, these energy demand indicators have been seldom calculated. So this gives us already a perspective on how limited is the literature right now on energy security. At least is too focused, to say the least. But there is a third problem with the literature right now, is that one of the most popular indicators of energy security, you may know, which is the energy independence, the energy imports above the energy consumption of the country. This indicator actually is very fragile. Why? Because if that country reduces is an importing country, meaning that it imports a significant amount of its energy, consumed. And if the country reduces its energy demand, actually you will end up reducing at the same time the imports, meaning that for the indicator, you reduce both the energy, the numerator and the denominator, leaving the final result unchanged. Whereas the vulnerability of the country in terms to energy shocks is much lower. So this gives you an example how this very important and very used indicator is also very fragile to assess energy security. So with all that to say that we felt the need to develop more the energy security indicators and to improve energy security assessments. And so we have combined two different indicators to show that by combining different perspectives, we can get more insights and new insights for energy security. So in this graph, in the x-axis, we have an end-use indicator, which is energy intensity, primary energy on above a GDP. And whenever we go towards numbers, smaller numbers, that means less energy intensity and more efficiency, so an increased efficiency. In the y-axis, we have a Shannon index, which is an index based on the diversity of energy supplies, meaning that a higher number refers to more diversity of supplies, so an increased resilience by this way. So what we see here for 6 countries, Brazil, China, India, Japan, United Kingdom, and the United States, very, very large energy systems and representative in the world, we see that over the past century, the 20th century, there is a pattern for less energy intensity, so increased efficiency, and at the same time, increased resilience, meaning that there is some evidence that energy efficiency may create the conditions or lead to greater diversity and better resilience to shocks. So this is an interesting insight that it's both important, is historical, and at the same time also opened the prospect of having more lessons by combining different perspectives, what has not happened or has happened in very few cases up to now. So what we tried to do in this study, we compared different strategies or policies by using multiple indicators. So more specifically, we have compared 5 different policy interventions to achieve the same goal, or to offset 10% primary energy. Why 10%? Well, 10% can gives us the size of an energy disruption, an energy crisis. Just to give you an example, COVID in the US actually reduced in that year, in 2020, the energy consumption by around 7%. At the same time, it is a good reference because 10%, 1% would be just 1/10 of the results that we are going to see, or 20%, which would be a major disruption, would be just the double. So it can give a good reference point for analyzing the energy security and vulnerability to energy security or enhancement to energy security. So we have considered different policies as mentioned, policies at different levels of the energy matrix. So considering primary energy, but also final energy and interventions at useful energy level. And we use different types of indicators, of course, supplies both from supply and the end use side. So the first strategy or the first policy intervention that we modeled was import diversification, meaning that we reduce the participation of the 2 largest suppliers of energy for a country and allocate that supplies to the other suppliers and in the size of 10% of primary energy. The second intervention is on final energy, is the substitution of oil by domestic biofuels. This, I should mention, this is a very optimistic policy because not all the countries have can produce the equivalent of 10% of primary energy on domestic biofuels. But still, it's a supply intervention. We aim it to also test it and compare with the other types of interventions. The next one, which is marked here as with U and E1, is the reduction is on the demand and is a reduction of low temperature heat demand from buildings. The fourth one is the electrification of transportation. And finally, an additional one, which is CSF2, that means critical social functions. This policy intervention, it's a bit different than the other ones. Actually, it considers what is needed and what is the repercussion in terms of energy security of ensuring only the critical social functions of a society in terms of transportation, of low temperature heat that the country needs to run, for instance, hospitals. So that one actually gives us a measure of the ultimate vulnerability of the different countries. So as mentioned, we have several indicators, 12 indicators from the supply side and end use. We did this analysis for 14 countries, which represent 2/3 of the global primary energy consumption. And we used several data sets to run the analysis. And I'm mentioning here in the slide the name of this data sets, which you probably already should know. Okay, so I'm presenting here the main graph that actually compiles all the results, the aggregated results for the different indicators or dimensions. We have indicators, the dimensions from the supply and demand indicators as well. 100% represents the situation, the departure situation in the year 2019. And if there is an improvement, the indicator should show a value above 100%. And now you can understand if there is a deterioration of the energy security situation, this indicator should show a value below 100%. And what we see on green is the dimensions for which actually energy demand strategies or policy interventions present a higher value. So meaning that they enhance more the energy security. And on red, you will see the situations for them for which the interventions in the supply side actually produce a better result. And as you can see in the graph, demand side policies consistently present better results than the interventions in the supply, except in these two indicators, the shares indicators, the ratio indicators, share of non-fossil fuels and import dependency. As I mentioned in the beginning, these are also the two problematic indicators that actually don't reflect very well the level of vulnerability of the countries, despite being used heavily in the literature and the analysis. So even when we don't consider this extreme case of critical social functions, we still see consistent better performance from policy interventions that actually act upon the demand side. So the blue colors represent the policy interventions on the demand, and the red colors, the policy interventions on the supply. And without these critical social functions, so we still see a better performance of for instance, low temperature heat demand reduction and transport electrification for enhancing energy security. So in this graph, we actually studied the influence, because up to now I've shown you the aggregate effect for the 14 countries. So let's see what happened when we actually disaggregate and look at the results and the impacts at the country level. So this graph, the rows shows the several indicators, the supply indicators and the demand indicators. Then the numbers means it's the number of the countries. You have 14 countries if, for instance, you take the first cell, saying 14, means that this particular intervention for that particular indicator, it improved for all the countries. For instance, transport electrification improved the energy security for the 14 countries for the share of non-fossil fuels. I'm taking the first cell. If there is a negative number, that means that there was a deterioration of the energy security compared to the reference year 2019. And what we see, and it's here in the final line in bold, we do see the main scores, the scores of by comparing all the cases and all the countries. In 138 cases, transport electrification had actually improved the energy security. This was 114 in the case of low temperature heat, and that compares with 88 and only 10 for the case of fuel substitution and import diversification, respectively. So we do see that also when we consider the specificities of each country, still demand-side policies almost always rank better when compared to the other policies. I should mention one final thing on this slide is that even though import diversification is clearly the worst policy intervention, it is the most popular, it was the most popular after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where we saw lots of European countries actually using the diversification of their energy imports in order to compensate for the energy crisis that that situation created. So as you see, even though it's the least one in the ranking, is the most popular. So that's showing that we could do better and improve the energy security of the countries by not doing the least policy. Well, in this graph, we also raise the question, what is the impact of the different policies in terms of co-benefits beyond the energy security? So we started by compare the impact into the emissions, the CO2 emissions. Of course, CO2 emissions are very important. The carbonization is one of the key challenges of society. Even yesterday, we had a new report from UN agency saying that the situation is far worse than expected. So CO2 emissions and decarbonization and climate mitigation is very important, and we must also see what is the repercussion, what is the impact for that front. When comparing the different policies, we see that, of course, the critical social functions one, which is more extreme, can reduce 2/3 of the emissions. We understand that. But then when we compare it for the other 4 policies, we see interesting things. Again, import diversification has no effect for climate mitigation whatsoever. And demand side policies are better than the supply side one, especially the low temperature heat reduction in buildings can achieve -13%. I remember that the policies are tuned in order to reduce 10% of primary energy consumption. And we see here, for instance, for the reduction of heat demand in buildings, that with that policy, we can leverage -13% of emissions, meaning that there is here some leveraging to also help into the climate mitigation front. So obviously here we show that by acting on improving the energy security, we can also advance decarbonization of the societies, such as this is one of the co-benefits of these policies. Of course, we would like to study more, and a spillover study actually is looking at several different dimensions of the well-being and the impacts that different policies can have, not only for security in terms of energy security, not only also for the climate mitigation, but also on the other dimensions such as health and so on. Before concluding, let me just present you some practical evidence of this more, let's say, abstract things that I've been showing you that can seem a bit abstract. But if you would like to have more practical examples, I will give you one. So this graph shows the share of the different suppliers of gas to Europe from 2019 above to 2023 below. And it highlights specifically the role of gas coming through pipelines in dark blue and through liquefied natural gas, LNG, from Russia in a light blue. And as we can see, between 2019 and 2023, there has been that much, this area highlighted in with this oval, red oval cycle. That part, that much has been the size of reduction of the energy demand. And this is interesting. Why? Because the exact same figure represents 2/3 of the reduction in Russian supplies of gas that Europe managed to do between this period, meaning that the EU gas reduction, the EU gas consumption in Europe was, or most of the effort to reduce the supplies from Russia came from reducing the demand from gas. So this is very important because that shows that the acting on demand is very effective to solve energy security problems. But let me compare that with a different approach that actually we saw during that period. So during that period, we saw lots of investments in regasification infrastructure. I remember this regasification infrastructure is very important for diversifying, or has been sold for diversifying the supplies of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. And Europe has invested a lot, as you can see in this graph, but at the same time, this helped to increase the supplies of LNG to Europe from Russia. So this created additional vulnerability problems vis-a-vis Russia. And in some cases, like the case of Spain, actually during this period, this country doubled the acquisition of LNG gas from Russia and even became a platform to distribute Russian gas in a different way to other countries in Europe, such as France, Italy, or even Germany. So as you can see, comparing to acting on demand, this strategy to improve the supply infrastructure actually had much worse effects on the energy security. So to conclude, I would start with this main conclusion, which is energy security is not only securing the supply of energy. Unfortunately, the energy security in most of the studies out there up to now has been treated as the security of supply. It is not, it has other dimensions. And whenever we only look at security of supply, we are not really analyzing the vulnerability of households and individuals to energy shocks. And in order to also look and quantify that vulnerability, we should also include a demand perspective. On the other hand, when we combine different indicators, we could see or we could find this interesting pattern of higher efficiency that actually creates conditions to improve our resilience, the diversity of energy energy supplies and the resilience. This is a very interesting insight that we got by combining these indicators. Demand policies, as you saw, are consistently better, respectively of the country that we consider. And specifically for the supply side, the import diversification has happened to be the least effective strategy, despite being the most used in practice. However, we do think that more research is needed in this area, because we heard that from several researchers that sometimes it's difficult to find data specifically on data on demand. But we would also like to develop the co-benefits, because we saw that this is an important part of the puzzle considering the energy security interventions. So the effects and the effects in the other sectors and for other societal challenges. So for that reason, we would like also to develop this study on this analysis on the co-benefits on climate and the well-being dimensions. Well, with that said, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to receive your questions, insights, comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your great informative presentation. Conventional and current indicators indexes that measure energy security focus mainly on energy supply, but this paper is taking demand-side approaches to examine the impact of demand-side policies on energy security using multiple indicators, both from supply side and demand side. This is a great contribution to the research and discussion on energy security issues. So now I'm moving on to the Q&A session. We got a question from Carl on slide 11. In which context does demand-side policies worsen energy security? So Nuno, you have the floor.
Well, there are 14 countries. I should come back to the slide where it worsened. Let me just check. So I can share with you. So as we see here, in most of the cases, it has not improved. So the number does not turn 1, but we also see that it does not actually reduce it. Most of the cases is either it doesn't goes above 100%, or it remains 100%. Honestly, I cannot remember of cases where it happened to reduce. It could well be, but I don't remember. And yeah, I would not say the answer by heart right now, but I can tell you that for some cases like import diversification, it really reduced in several of cases, and fuel substitution as well. Especially in the case of fuel substitution, I remember that there was a strong effect in the one indicator, a particular indicator, which is the savings in terms of primary energy, because fuel substitution ended up adding more primary energy than actually the initial goal.
Okay, thank you. And another question is from Johnny. Energy security is very important indeed. How you think the situation of energy and food security, such as biofuels, is trigger deforestation while it's still important for energy security in developing countries?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny, for the question. That's a very important question. Well, I don't know the situation in Indonesia. Perhaps you have also the situation of Indonesia in mind. I am not really a specialist on that field. I'm not neither a specialist in the Brazilian case, but I can tell you that, for instance, the Brazilian case has a clear trade-off between the food production, because they have a very strong biofuel sector. We can understand that there might be some trade-offs between the producing food, biofuels for food, or producing food for biofuels or for the people. So in that sense, the question is whether there are trade-offs between securing energy supplies or securing food for the people, so preventing food crisis. Yeah, I would just say, and with the light of these results, that if you want to produce more biofuels with the argument that this improves your energy security, actually this is not shown in the data, because fuel substitution is not ranked, not even in the second place of our analysis. So in that sense, that would ease this trade-off between preserving food security or preserving energy security, because there would be other ways better to improve the energy security of the country. I don't know if I was clear, Johnny, but thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you. And we got question from Nicholas. Very interesting approach on energy security and highlights of demand side benefits beyond security of supply. But the two main demand side measures analyzed are mainly related to efficiency, even partially fuel substitution for transport electrification. Why didn't you analyze sufficiency measures, which have a potential of demand reduction similar to efficiency in some countries? Okay.
Well, thanks, Nicola. I don't know if it was, I'm seeing here the name of the people. Maybe it was Nicola Tayar, right? Is the name? Okay, so great question. And the simple answer, yes, we did, is the CSF scenario, critical social functions. But I understand that you mean like having a normal scenario, not a disruptive scenario. Yes, you're right. And in the following works, that is noted, and we'll try to have also something more related with sufficiency, not only in a very disruptive scenario. Thanks, Nicola.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question from Ayami. Thanks for the excellent and exciting research and presentation. What are the costs of policy interventions and how do they continue to be effective? I would appreciate it if you give us some comments. Accounting model based on physical energy flows was used. What innovations would be needed to apply this model to evaluate future scenarios?
Okay, thanks, Yamina, for the questions too. If I remember well, two important questions. First of all, the costs. And actually, I was here, and I can show you again. We have one indicator which actually refers to the costs, which is, and there are two basically. The share of energy expenditures on GDP, the share of savings in energy expenditures on the fossil total share of PE on GDP, so the energy intensity, and we have also the savings in energy expenditure. So actually, costs are covered in these three indicators out of the 12 indicators. So we have already 3 out of 12, 25%. And in regarding the way that we could use this framework to energy forecasts or in analysis for the future, well, actually, yes. Right away, we could apply not only supply side indicators, but also demand side indicators. So this work could inform the type of indicators to add also to the studies, specifically in the diagnostics of the scenarios. So if you're doing an energy security diagnostic of the results, we could, right away you could start also adding some indicators on the demand side to have the complete picture. And you could also use the framework of this study in order not to actually raise questions or use the historical data as we did, so by simulating, but by actually looking at the way that the countries in your different scenarios behave against these indicators and reporting in this way. But instead of being a simulation with historical data, you would do that analysis with the results that you obtain from your scenarios. Yes, I think that would be a nice contribution, and this is the two ways that I would see you could implement, and that could be helpful for your works. Thanks, Yamina.
Thank you. And we have a question from Elisa. Thank you for your presentation. This is outside your specific research, but I'm wondering if you could provide insight into why countries have been so quick to want to diversify in the past. When you show that, that it is not the most beneficial policy. Do you know what factors lead to that seemingly counterintuitive decision?
Yeah, thanks, Elisa. That's a good question. I would see several factors. First of all, there is a cognition factor, meaning that whenever already it's well known that the research is specifically in the energy domain has given predominance to the supply side. This is a well-known fact, and there are some reasons, because there's more funding, because the companies from the supply actually dominate or can have an influence on the agendas. There are several reasons. And then there is also a cognitive factor, meaning that very often the people try to look at the problem, for instance, the climate change challenge, or this energy security problem, and try right away to find strategies from the supply side. And the third case is not only a cognitive, but this cognitive bias has been amplified not only by the literature, but also by some reference international organizations. Whenever they come up with analysis, they use the popular energy independence ratio. So all the indicators they mobilize are from the supply side, and of course all the results shown are more comparing supply side options, and now the results and the conclusions points also to supply side strategies. And with all that, actually, I'm not surprised that you can see very often, studies saying that import diversification can have a great impact or a great effect. What happens is, whenever you challenge this supply predominance and try to compare this superiority of import diversification is actually put into question. And this is what we did. And as you could see in the case of the LNG that I brought here, sometimes it has not good effects at all, because it creates other types of vulnerability. And if I remember well, and I don't want to kind of spend all the morning, with this topic, but it's very important that when we saw, in the first months of the energy crisis, the last one, right after the invasion of Ukraine, we heard lots of people from the agencies and from the companies saying that we should invest more in the fossil fuel infrastructure in order to secure our energy for the future. Well, this is, of course they seize the opportunity, but if the countries do this because they think they will be more secured, it's not going to happen, and it actually creates additional problems because it reinforces the lock-in. And finally, to conclude on that point, we also heard recently, from some people that we have tried energy demand reductions in the past, it didn't work. But do you think that really Brussels tried to reduce energy demand in Europe? Perhaps they did nice policies, but these policies, as someone was explaining to me, were difficult to implement because some of the incentives to reduce the energy consumption, for instance, in your place, were very difficult. One, sometimes the people didn't know that these incentives existed, and two, you would need so many administrative things that it would be almost impossible for a regular citizen to get these subventions. So I don't think that the governments have tried the most to reduce demand, and I think that they went for what they thought it was easier, which was import diversification. But as a matter of fact, actually what resulted in the end of the day was the reduction of the demand in the case of gas, of gas demand. I don't know if my answer was satisfying, but yeah, that's what I think about how import diversification is so popular. Thanks for the question, Lisa.
Thank you. While waiting for questions, I have a couple of questions to you. Can we act as fast and impactful with demand-side policies? such as thermal installations, than with energy supply solutions, for example, biofuels?
That's a difficult question, and it's related with this one Elise brought here, and the question is, and the result is actually, I think that we can act on with scale and with speed needed to reduce the energy security problem and also to help for climate mitigation. I mean, there is plenty of evidence showing that more granular technologies actually can diffuse faster than large technologies. Just for the reference, some of you may know this Charles Wilson's paper on Science 2020 that show that plenty of comparisons between different sizes of technologies, showing clearly that there were plenty and diverse type of benefits by going with the granular technology. So that's one point. You could go with smaller technology, and that used to happen in the demand side, like such as changing the lights and so on. You could actually have a fast, you could deploy them and have an impact faster. On the other hand, another question that people used to raise is, what about the coordination? So is there any coordination issues with by deploying the granular technologies? Well, it seems that it doesn't affect the diffusion of other technologies in the past. So I would say that also the deployment of very large technologies raises questions. Look at the way that nuclear power plants have been delayed. You know, all these projects have been delayed in the recent years. So that shows that going also for very large projects in order to make things faster is not sometimes is not the right strategy, I would say. So I think that it's not a problem by going with demand side policies. It does not affect and even accelerates the way that these policies can improve energy security and for instance improve also into the decarbonization area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the answer. And another question is how ratio indicators of energy security, like the energy independence ratio, are so popular, and what are the implications of their use? So you know that most researchers focus on the import diversifications and also energy independence ratios. So what is the problems will occur?
Yeah, the main problem, thanks, Miyuki. This is really important because these indicators have been used so much that it's important to highlight that actually they are not, at least, you know, by using solely, so without other complementary indicators, it's very dangerous to use them, such as, you know, the ratio of energy independence, so the imports through energy dependence, which is the same imports above the energy consumption, or the share of fossil fuels. You know, the problem is about the scale. The main problem is about the scale. You have a ratio, and this ratio could be very high, but if the scale, it doesn't tell you what is the scale of your dependence, because if it's high but it's a very small amount of energy that is actually imported, this doesn't mean much when actually the scale of imports is really huge, and it takes lots of resources from your country. I was giving this example. Whenever you do energy efficiency or you reduce demand, you actually live and change, because you are acting both on numerator and denominator. You are living and change the indicator, whereas at the end, the scale of vulnerability of your country has decreased significantly. So it's important to note that these indicators have this problem, and at the very least, do not use them alone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have a question about the energy prices. So is energy security still relevant when the energy prices, such as natural gas prices, are stabilizing or even reducing?
Yeah, it's even more relevant because if we do nothing in times of, let's say, peace, I'm referring not peace, of course, the geopolitical peace, unfortunately, is not the case, but in a more peaceful environment in terms of energy prices, if you do nothing, then whenever the energy security problem comes back, the way it eats the countries and especially the families is even worse. So it's one reason more to act right now and try to decrease the vulnerability, especially of the households and the individuals, to energy shocks, and not be blinded by this fact of conjunctural stabilization of the energy prices.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and regarding the rebound, what about the effect of rebounds in limiting the effect of demand interventions to enhance energy security?
Well, on the other hand, I think that we have several aspects when considering rebounds as a limiting factor of the demand side policies. On the one hand, whenever you have energy poverty, and especially in the global south, the energy rebounds is not really one of the major problems. And the major goals or aims must be to actually make a way that everybody can have access to energy, and at least to a minimal levels of comfort. On the other hand, you know, what you can also see is that, okay, in some cases you may see rebounds. I'm thinking think on the case of the improvement in lighting. So in lighting, what we saw is that with the new technology, light bulbs such as LED, for instance, you can have unprecedented levels of lumens per bulbs, and especially lumens per watt. So they are really efficient. Several scales of efficiency. If you get some rebounds, let's say 20 or 30%, but your efficiency increased of 100 or even more percent, you will see that even by factoring these rebounds, you would still reduce your consumption at the end of the day. So even technological change can help to limit this effect of rebounds, and still your demand side policies become effective and more effective than supply.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, do you have a result by regions? Like, are there any tendency for the net exporter or for net importers?
Yes, I have a nice graph for that. Yeah, it's interesting because we didn't combine the questions, but I have a nice graph for that. Let me just. Oh, you still see the graph, right? Oh, no.
No. Could you share your slides?
Yeah. So I have one backup slide which shows that. Oh, this is it. Not this one. Too fast. So what shows this graph? This graph shows for the 14 countries. It shows the impacts, also the policy effort, as relative to 10% primary energy reduction target. Meaning, okay, what does it mean to reduce your policy? The different policies. So each bar represents one of the policies, and here you have the keys. And what you can see in always comparing to 10% reduction in primary energy consumption, if you act on, let's say, on green, like transport electrification, or blue, reducing the low temperature heat in buildings, you have a consistently lower impact. So the idea is you have to lower because there are some leverages effects in the energy scales. You don't need to reduce as much energy in the upstream, in the primary energy. So if you only act on import diversification, you need to reduce the 100%, meaning the 10%. But if you do act on final energy, like fuel substitution, is a bit less. And on the other ones, and useful energy level, it's much lower. So in comparing in terms of, what would that need to reduce to make the exact same effect. But whenever we have here categorized, so we have here grouped the countries into net importers and net exporters of energy. And it was interesting to see a slight larger leverage effect for the net exporters. Maybe their system is a little bit, their energy system is a little bit less efficient, and by this way acting in the more downstream, meaning in the useful energy level, actually has more leverage effect. But yeah, this was what we found by comparing the two types of countries.
Thank you. I was just wondering, what is the policy implications for countries which heavily rely on imported fossil fuels like Japan?
Well, we actually studied the case of Japan, and we even did some analysis of additional sensitivity policies. We considered heat pumps instead of thermal insulation. We considered hydrogen instead of biofuels. This is reported in the SI of the paper. For Japan, it's the case. It's not an outlier, but it's a specific. It's a very specific context. So it's better. I don't know. I don't have here the graph, but I suggest everyone interested to the Japanese case to look at our Japanese section, because you would see that there is some specificities to this country, because it's a very important net importer country, and yeah, some supply policies may have larger effect in specific terms. But yes, I don't remember all the details. I just invite anyone interested in Japanese case to check out the SCI, that section.
Okay, thank you. This is really informative for us.
Thank you.
And we got a second question from Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
AI now using for research. What do you think AI for research in low energy demand, like ChatGPT?
Well, yeah, John, yeah. Thanks a lot for your question. This is, it's a very hot topic right now. You're right. ChatGPT can have worse things for the energy security if you consider some claims under which ChatGPT is driving up, or all this generative linguistic technologies. They have the potential to increase the energy demand. So in that case, that will worsen the energy security of the countries. But in the positive side, I would consider that maybe these tools could also give advices and could feature into the appliances and other equipments in order to improve the efficiency of the energy services. So at the end, I would say that the impact of artificial intelligence can improve things, so can reduce the energy demand, the emissions in the future, and improve the energy security if the net effect in the energy demand would be to the sense that to improve energy efficiency, and by this way lower the energy demand. If I can do that, that would be great. Otherwise, we should mind the effects in the energy demand. But yeah, sorry, Johnny, to be so general, but I think this is an entire new research to be done. And yeah, if you like this, the impacts of IA in energy, you should go for it, because it's very important.
Okay, thank you. I think that we are on time, and thank you for your active participation and lively discussion. Thank you, Nuno, for the informative presentation, great presentations. And now I'm closing the webinar. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.